your risk profile, right? Now, moving on to understanding what do we mean by asset allocation. For that, we need to understand the asset classes. We all have heard about stocks. We all have heard about FDs. We all have heard about real estate, apartments, and land. And we all have heard about the gold jewelry, diamonds, platinum, everything. But sometimes, we are not much aware about that they all belong to different asset classes which have different characteristics. So the very first asset class is the equity asset class, which I am taking here. When you invest in an equity asset class, and the example of an instrument of the asset class is, buying a share of a company. So when you buy a share of a company, you are buying an ownership into that company in that proportion, right? So you need to think like an owner of a company when you are applying to buy a share of a particular company. Now, what is fixed income? So you might have heard about the bonds. Now, many companies, including governments and including municipalities, they are in need of money. Hence, one of the way in which they generate finance for themselves is by coming out with bonds. Now, when they come out with bonds, we buy those bonds. When we buy those bonds, is actually we are lending them the money for their finance. And in turn, we are earning the interest. Hence, that asset class is called as fixed income because we would be achieving or receiving a fixed amount of interest from that investment. The other asset class, which is very important and highly undermined, is cash and cash equivalent. We don't know what may happen because life has its own plan. But let's not forget that even though life has its own plan and it's everything, well charted out in the heaven, but as a human being, it is also said that God help those who help themselves, isn't it? So we should always be well prepared with a plan in order to beat, the plan which has already been planned by the in heaven, right? So cash and cash equivalent is that asset class which which would be required for any of your emergency expenses. Also, what if there's a job loss? What if you have to suddenly, you have to take a break? What if, suddenly you meet with an accident and you are in need of, quite a lot of money to pay to the hospital immediately, right? So there can be number of reasons wherein you might be having certain emergency requirement. And years when, your contingency fund helps you. And this has been, proven and people have realized this importance during COVID time. That the contingency fund is very important and there has to be a certain percentage of your portfolio into that particular asset class. Then comes the alternative asset class, the real estate, which we hear, the apartments, the land, the house, the commodities, that includes gold, that includes silver, that includes platinum, all the metals and other commodities as well. Private equity, we see that all comes under alternative asset class. Now let's understand their characteristics because that what brings the differentiation factor. So here I have given it chart wise. So there are certain characteristics given for each and every asset class, like as I already told you about cash and cash equivalent, it provides liquidity, isn't it? What do you mean by equity? What do you mean by fixed income? And what do you mean by alternative asset class as well as derivatives? Right? Now the differentiation again comes when the basic characteristics are different. Naturally, there is a differentiation in returns and risk as well. So as we can see, where there is lower risk, the returns are also lower, but we cannot generalize that in certain of the asset class where the risks are higher, but then also returns are moderate and even uncertain, right? There are objectives to invest into each and every asset class. Like for an example, at the age of 25, you are young. You have a period of growth in front of you. So for you, which kind of the asset class would be best fit? It would be equity asset class. Why? Because equity is about the business wanting to raise money for their own growth. So your objective and the business's objective aligns, there in that asset class. Hence, generally it is recommended, that younger people, when they start their financial journey, they should, invest more towards equity asset class, right? We would be taking this point again as we move ahead in our slide. There are certain examples of each and every asset class also given. So this understanding is very much required, because basis this, we would be selecting the different investment instruments and preparing a portfolio in order to generate returns to achieve our financial goals given our risk tolerance level. Now let's come back to equity and bonds. Now again to that graph of human capital and financial capital, right from the age of 25 to 90 years. Now this, any investment is highly dynamic in nature, and it has to be evolved as we pass through different stages in our life. The beginning stage of our life in our career is the accumulation phase. Then comes the growth phase. Then comes the preservation phase. And after retirement comes the distribution phase. Now, as we pass through this major four stages, our asset allocation also changes accordingly. As you can see, at the age of 25, higher portion of your portfolio is towards equity, while a smaller portion is towards your fixed income, that is represented by bond. Right? As we grow, as we move ahead in our life, that portfolio shows a shift. The fixed income proportion in our portfolio increases slightly, and the equity proportion gets lesser a bit. As we grow older and past our retirement stage, as we can see, it's more or less 50-50, or even, 60-40, and sometimes 70-30. And while, at, extreme sunset, when the sun is about to set, your portfolio is more towards, it's completely, the other way, it's more towards fixed income and lesser on the equity side. Now, I hope, our journey about setting the context, about understanding the why, about addressing the what, and going through, how can we start with our financial journey. Here's some, thought in the end, and it is for everybody in the room over here, not only specific to women. So let's try to understand that a bit. Now, we women, if we think, we are customers. When it comes to buying, we are like quite enthusiastic, as we all know about it, isn't it? So when we buy anything, any product or any service of a company, we are investing in their products and services. So we are astute buyers, right? So that makes us, gives a reason to be proud, okay, that we are already investing. When we are working in an organization, why did we select that organization? It's only always that the organization select us? No, we also select the organization, and when we go there to work, we have invested in the business's vision and mission. And we put, all our efforts in order to achieve corporate vision and mission. So that makes us investor, isn't it? Now, women as influencer. right? We not only buy for ourselves, we talk to other 10 women, and we influence all the people around us. People listen to us. People takes, tips from us. So that way as well, we are investing, by connecting to your products and services. So we already are investors. Then shouldn't, the rest of the population invest in women and women's financial well-being? That's my last question to everybody in this room, because that is going to be a win-win situation, not only for the household, for the businesses, as well as the economy of our country. So I thank you all very much for patiently being there during the session. And now I'm open for, any kind of the queries, which you may want to ask in the session. And that's what I would like to say at the end, which is being displayed over here, that we should be focusing on what we can control. So over to you, Amanji, further.
Thank you so much, Nema. This has been an eye-opener.
Thank you so much.
There are obviously lots of things that I wasn't aware of. And I'm sure our participants also would have learned from this and made a note.
Thank you so much.
There was one question I saw in the chat. I don't know, Sai, if you can dig it out. And anybody who wants to interact with Nema can unmute themselves and speak to them.
Okay, I'm not able to see chat.
If you stop sharing.
The question was how to save at least 50% of one's income and what kind of investment to prioritize on.
Yeah. So, yes, indeed, a very good question. Now, before I would be trying to give you the overall answer to your question, to be very specific, we need to talk one-on-one and know more about, other details as well. But let me try to, give you an generalized answer to that. How to save at least 50% of one's income? Now, that is a very good question, I would say. And I would even like to say that that part I haven't kept in this slide, but to my students in MBA where I'm taking this subject, I teach them an equation. The equation we generally follow, in our budget or in our day-to-day life is income minus expenses is equal to savings, right? But is that a correct equation? No. The correct equation is that as soon as we receive income, we should be setting aside a percentage of income as savings, right? And whatever that is income minus saving, the funds which are left thereafter has to be, be towards our all the different categories of expenses. So if you have a question that how can I save 50% of savings, then the very first exercise would be that what is your income? So you have to understand your income pattern for few months, at least for 6 months. You have to understand what are different expenses that you have to meet during, entire month, right? You have to prioritize your expenses into different buckets. Some of them are, falling into the bucket of needs. Some of them are falling into the bucket of wants. And some of them are falling into the bucket of the aspirational expenses, or we can say the desirable expenses, right? So we have to understand our expense pattern, and that varies from individual to individual, and there as well, our behavioral aspects comes into picture, because our priorities are decided based on our psychology as well as our behavior, which is the reflection of our psychology, right? So that I hope I have answered your first part of the question. And about the investments which if you are working, your part of your saving goes through EPF. If you are having a PPF account, you are also saving through that, right? You might be having your some of the additional which you would have be requiring in order to, compensate with the taxes, right? So that kind of the savings which you are already doing it. So you need to figure out, you need to understand your salary slip, where the portion of your income is going towards your savings, long-term savings or with short-term savings. Is there any debt which is going on as the EMI is getting deducted? And, other deductions which are happening. And then finally, you have to put it in a budget. You have to prepare a budget and find out the investable surplus. Based on that investable surplus, you can decide which investment instruments you can put it, given your risk-taking ability, that is risk tolerance, and given your financial goals, right? So there the financial planning exercise, the basic, stepping, or we can say the foundational block is the budget. So you have asked a very good question. Yeah. So I hope I have been able to give you a generalized answer. To be more specific, I need to have some more details.
Before anybody asks a question, I have a request to all the participants. Sai has put up a link for the feedback form. Would truly appreciate if you could take a couple of seconds to fill it up. That will also help us, to further fine tune and नीमा के लिए भी अच्छा होगा. So please, जरा भर दीजिए ना please. And any questions, please shoot off to Nema.
I see one question over here, and that is, what is the meaning and difference of equity mutual fund and equity ETFs? Again, a very good question, though it is, specific to the investment instrument. So for that, equity, what is the meaning and difference? So the very first, let's understand the meaning of equity mutual fund. So mutual fund, as you have seen, it was not seen in any of the asset class, did it? Was it as an asset class? No. It's not an asset class, but it's a pseudo asset class. Meaning, when we put in our money or the investable surplus into mutual fund, that is a manufactured or prefabricated. I'm a mechanical engineer, so this kind of terms comes out naturally from me. So, those are pre-designed portfolios, through which you invest into different financial securities. You are not investing directly into a particular asset class, but you are indirectly investing into different asset classes. So for an example of equity mutual fund, we need to understand that when we buy a particular share of a company, we are investing directly into equity. But when we buy equity mutual fund, we are not directly investing into equity, but we are investing into equity through mutual fund. So mutual fund is a pseudo asset class, and in the book of NISM, that is Investment Advisory Level 1, it is also been said as a vehicle, an investment vehicle. So that is the meaning of equity mutual fund. Now, there was another investment instrument, which was equity ETF. Now, what is this ETF? So let me put in the full form first, that is exchange traded fund. Hence, we need to understand the difference. What is mutual fund and then what is ETF then? Mutual funds, there is a difference between mutual fund and ETF. When we buy ETF, that ETF design is like a fund, but that fund is designed on which is just exactly copying a particular index. So let's take an example of Nifty 50. You all, I'm sure you might have heard somewhere about that index because it's lately a lot in the news, right? So Nifty 50 is a particular index, There are certain number of stocks, Nifty 50 as said, so there are 50 stocks in that index with different weightages to each stock. Now exactly uska copy banate hain ETF, right? And they make it as an exchange traded fund. Now this fund is ready to be tradable during the trading hours. That is, you can buy and sell, on the stock market, just like any other stock of the company. So hence it is called as ETF. It's a fund. It is designed, it is copied, from an index. This is an example of equity ETF. So I'm telling it as an index, right? Same stocks would be there with the same weightages. Hence, when Nifty 50 is moving up, that ETF is also going to copy that index and accordingly move up. So its behavior would be very similar, almost alike to Nifty 50 index. Right? So when you are clueless about which stock to select, the best thing is to start your financial journey by buying an ETF, equity ETF, right? I hope I have made some sense, and about the difference between equity mutual fund and ETF. There are a number of other differences as well, but that's altogether a different topic and which can go on for half an hour or 45 minutes. So yeah, definitely I can take on that topic if required later.
Nema,
thank you so much for asking.
One more question. Would you like to answer one more last question?
Which it is?
So nowadays savings are very difficult part to do in a less salary. So how to manage everything?
Yeah, less salary. So yeah, I can understand that the salary distribution among different people in India is, quite varied in nature. So what do you consider as less? So that is the very first thing you have to understand. You have to figure out what are your absolutely necessary expenses. Very first thing. Secondly, what are your wants? That two things you have to figure out. The aspirational part is where you can work a lot, you need working. But when you think your salary is less, in order to determine what makes it less, you need to figure out your absolutely necessary expenses and the wants, without which, life is very difficult for you, right? So after figuring out that expenses, the income which you already know, which you are having, you know, you you can start small. Okay, you can start small. Let's say you can start with as low as 5%, right? Carry on that for few months. Okay, see whether you are generating an investable surplus, from that particular entire structure budget you have prepared. If you have generated in those months some additional surplus, then you can, think about adding to that percentage, maybe make it 6%, maybe increasing it to 7%. But knowing about your lifestyle and the expenses is very important, because if you ask, people who are earning 1 lakh per month salary, they also would not tell that, I'm earning, quite a lot, isn't it? So for that matter, we have to do a relational exercise and find out what makes your salary less. Is it that you have to work more on the salary side, or is it that you need to work on the expenses side? Now, in order to increase your salary, you can think of having some add-on skills, or maybe even think of generating some passive income, wherein, you don't have to put, wherein you can manage your time effectively as well. You don't have to put, too much of efforts, like your regular, it should not impact your regular job, right? So that is what they say as moonlighting. but well, that's a highly debatable topic. But that is why sometimes people require moonlighting. So that's the space where I would not like to go. But yeah, uh, I hope I have answered, some part of your question. Yeah, some magic tricks. There are some thumb rules which I can share with you. Yeah, later on, definitely. I can share the whole list of thumb rules with you.
I think there's one more question from Dolly. Say, will you
Okay.
read it out, please?
Oh, I can't see.
Yes.
आपको देखा last
Just a second.
है chat में. Or let me read it out. Ma'am, in recent times, commitments are increasing, but the package that we receive, we are not able to fulfill our commitments. This leads to increase in debt. Please suggest on this.
Your commitments, meaning commitments in life or commitments on job?
Life, ma'am.
In life, your commitments are increasing and compensation is not increasing accordingly. That's what you are asking me, right? And that is the reason why debt is increasing. Yeah, so debt planning has to be worked out because yeah, if your debt to income ratio is very high, then it is naturally going to affect your life as well as your financial planning. So we need to figure out again, our income and an average, increment year on income, which we can get, which on an average we have to assume, how much would it be increasing. On other side, we have to even keep in mind the inflation rate, which is also increasing, hence your expenses would also be increasing. Now in that process, you might end up taking very high debt. Like for an example, the goal of buying a house is the one of the biggest goal after retirement, in the entire financial planning. And for that matter, we have to take a debt which can go on up to 15 to 20 years. Now here we really need to think. We all have, we women are very high on emotions, right? So while buying a house, we, there is again, we need a point wherein we have to keep our emotions into check, right? If we are getting into a very huge debt, then we need to defer our goals where, our debt is not such a big burden to us. Till then, we can enjoy living, in the same kind of locality, in the same type of the house or same kind of an apartment on rent. So there that would ask some deferment of the goals. So in financial planning, that is where it comes the importance of risk profiling. People have very big goals. Okay, they have, I mean, I would say they have goals in our life, in their life, but then either the risk capacity or the risk willingness is, pulling down their overall risk tolerance level. So what we, generally recommend to them is we either to work out on their financial goal value. So if you are thinking of buying a 1 crore of an apartment, then maybe, you need to find out an apartment, which is on the lower side, maybe 75 lakhs or so, or to defer it, push it on your timeline a little bit further. So that's the whole financial planning exercise wherein we have to optimize at the time of your goal planning and risk profiling. Yeah, so that's a very important the question, and that is the reason why That is the reason why financial planning is a very important exercise, because most of the people realize this after taking the debt, and then they feel that, oh, they face so much of financial pressure. And during that span, if one of the partner loses a job, it becomes very difficult. Let me tell you, I have seen, I do not, we are all, going to celebrate Women's Day, but Corona was a time which have, been an eye opener for many people on the financial planning side, especially to women. So this is precisely the reason why financial planning should be done. And for women, it is even more important because we have to overcome many challenges, right? Starting with the mindset and myth. And if we have to handle, as we have seen the longevity graphs, if we have to handle it completely on ourselves, either we may be single. We also know that society is changing and there are a lot of separation and divorce rates going up. We need to understand the fabric of the society and, accordingly, bring change in ourselves as well, and vice versa. Some of the change we have to drive in us, and some of the change we have to drive in the society through us, isn't it? But that was a very good question. Even previous question was also very good, and this is the reason why we need financial planning. It has to be worked out, it has to be calculated. Everybody has the right to live a life with dignity and according to their dreams, right? And goals is what makes our life enriching.
Thank you, ma'am, for the useful time.
Thank you so much for asking. Any other questions?
I think we have answered all the questions.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for participating in this session. And thank you, Nema, for making us aware about all the finance related terms.
Thank you so much. And I wish everybody a very happy Women's Day. And I hope I have inspired and I've given, few things which might help you, to either continue with your financial journey, lift your financial journey. I mean, on a, accelerate, I would say, your financial journey. And yeah, that would be really, I would find it a success. Yeah.
Once again, I would request all the participants to fill their feedback form. And thank you for joining. We'll conclude the session here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay.
ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Wish
you.
you a very happy Women's Day.
Thank
Not
you,
just Women's Day, but every day.
NHRDN,
Yeah.
once again.
Thank you, G, and we'll connect again.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana.
On behalf of SA, I would like to thank the person who has given the speech, and thank you, sir, so much. So hopefully this will be a great session to accompany and the ladies who had attended the session. Thank you very much and wishing everyone a happy Women's Day.
Thank you, Dolly, and the entire team. Do join us again.